Okay, so the moment a whole lot of security pros and developers have been waiting for is finally here. The brand new 2025 OWASP Top 10 list has just been released. And we're going to unpack what's changed, what's totally new, and why it really matters for pretty much every piece of software you use.
I mean, just think about it for a second. It sounds like a simple question, right? But the answer is, well, incredibly complex. From your banking app to your social media, every single thing you touch is in this constant fight against digital threats.
And that is why this is such a huge deal. The global playbook that developers and companies literally use to figure out which threats to tackle first has just been rewritten from the ground up. This signals a massive shift in how we all have to think about cybersecurity. So, what exactly is this new playbook? We're talking about the OWASP Top 10. You could say it's probably the most influential guide in application security, period. So, before we get into all the juicy changes, let's just quickly set the stage on why this list matters so much to begin with.
At its heart, everything we're talking about falls under this umbrella of AppSec. And look, this isn't just about patching holes after they're found. It's a whole process, building security into an app from the very first line of code all the way to its last day in service.
And the OWASP Top 10 is basically the map for that entire process. You can think of it as a global most wanted list for the 10 most critical risks to our web applications. It tells us where the digital battlefield is moving and, more importantly, where we absolutely must focus our defenses right now. And let me tell you, this year, that battlefield, it looks really different. The 2025 list has some of the biggest changes we've seen in years, and it's highlighting some brand new threats that have clawed their way right to the top. Okay, let's break this down because there's a lot to see here. Broken access control? Still the undisputed king at number 1. No surprise there. But look at this. Security misconfiguration rocketed from number 5 all the way up to number 2. That's a huge jump. Then we have the old familiar faces kind of hanging out where they were. But the real headline grabbers are the 2 completely new categories making their debut. Software supply chain failures comes in at a shocking number 3, and mishandling of exceptional conditions rounds out the list at number 10. So what on earth is a software supply chain failure? Well, think of it like this. If you're building a car, you don't make every single screw and wire yourself, right? You rely on hundreds of other suppliers. Now, what if just one of those suppliers gives you a faulty part? The entire car could be compromised. In software, that faulty part is a bad library, a compromised dependency, or a hacked build tool. We saw just how devastating this can be with things like the SolarWinds attack, where one single compromised update infected thousands of organizations. It's a massive and growing threat.
Now, this second newcomer, it's a little more subtle, but it's just as dangerous. This is all about what happens when things go wrong. If an app crashes, does it fail safely, or does it fail open, accidentally bypassing security checks or spitting out sensitive information in the error message? I mean, just imagine a login system glitches out, and instead of locking you out, it just lets you in, no password needed. That's exactly the kind of critical security hole this new category is all about. So look, these new entries aren't just minor tweaks to the list, they actually represent a fundamental change in how we need to think about security. The very nature of the threats we're all facing is evolving.
And this slide really nails that change. For years, the fight was against classic bugs, actual flaws in the code itself, like SQL injection. But now we're fighting systemic risks. It's less about one bad line of code and more about insecure design choices, flawed business logic, and that incredibly complex web of external software that all our apps depend on. The focus has really shifted from just fixing individual bugs to designing truly resilient systems. There's no better way to understand this whole evolution than by looking at the story of a vulnerability that used to absolutely dominate this list: injection. I mean, just look at this trend. For years and years, injection was the undisputed number 1 threat. It was the classic attack that every developer learned about. But over the last decade, it has just steadily dropped down the rankings, and now it's sitting at number 5. So, what happened? Well, this is actually a huge success story. It's not that the attackers just gave up. It's that we as an industry got better. Developer awareness went way up. And maybe even more importantly, modern coding frameworks came along that automatically prevent a lot of these classic attacks by default. Basically, our tools got smarter and solved the problem for us. So given this completely new threat landscape, how should our defense strategies change? Right. That brings us to our final section. What does a modern security checklist look like in this new era?
All right, here's what you really need to focus on now. First up, to fight the supply chain failures, you have to know what's in your software. That means keeping a software bill of materials, an SBOM. Just think of it like a detailed ingredient list for your app. Second, for misconfigurations, you need a constant process of hardening. That means regularly checking settings, turning off features you don't use, basically getting rid of anything that isn't absolutely necessary. Third, to nail access control, you've got to live by the principle of least privilege. Only give users and systems the exact permissions they need to do their job, and nothing more. And finally, to handle those exceptions safely, design your systems to fail closed. That means security is the default state, even when things go haywire.
And that, right there, is the real takeaway from the 2025 list. The entire focus has shifted. It's not enough to just be a good bug hunter anymore. The new security playbook is all about building systems that are secure by their very design, systems that are resilient, architecturally sound, and aware of the whole ecosystem they live in. Which leaves us with one last kind of crucial thought, that a client of injection proves that we can solve old problems with better tools and smarter frameworks. But are those very solutions, our heavy reliance on complex frameworks and these vast, sprawling software supply chains, are they creating the brand new systemic risks we're seeing today? It really makes you wonder. As we solve the problems of today, what new vulnerabilities are we accidentally creating for tomorrow?